Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Ron, broadcasting to you from the Pinos Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I am in the Extreme Studios with the young 20-something Professor Pixel, also from the Central Florida region, where at the time of this recording, Pixel, where we're at here, it's about 78, 80 degrees, balmy, getting close to Christmas. But it's appropriate because what I'm watching on TV is very dark. And of course, I'm referring to what we're continuing our coverage of here in TV land, and that would be Hannibal Season 1, Episodes 11 and 12. We have one more episode 13, that we have to do to kind of close up. And I can definitely say my first initial impression on these two episodes, because it's been years since I've seen this Pixel, is that it starts picking up some steam, and some of the loose ends that seem to have been forgotten, like Abigail and other things, to kind of pick up in place. And yeah, I got to admit, 11 was a little bit boring for me, but then it started getting a little bit intense, and 12's it's a bit of a banger, as people like to say, and all that too. But I enjoyed these episodes, and I'm curious, as a first-time watch for you, what did episode 11 feel like for you as you start to take us through it?
Wow, really? I'm kind of surprised to hear that. I liked 11 a little more than 12. 12 is
Really?
still good. Yeah, because we're going back to Dr. Chilton, and he went ahead in the episode that we saw him. He was trying to press upon Izzard, convince him that he was the Chesapeake killer, and Eddie pretty much was claiming that. He was, it was me all along. But it's clear that he has been persuaded to believe that, to even him now. And now he's starting to feel a little upset. I think we can say that. He goes ahead, he's having dinner with Hannibal, and he goes ahead and tells him that, and Hannibal's like, yeah, no. Going to court over this, yeah, no.
Have you heard of the term psychic driving before?
No, this is the first time I've heard psychic driving.
So,
Sorry, I have the
that?
episode on in the background. I forgot they showed the totem pole of bodies again.
Yeah, because you got to milk that. Yeah, this whole idea of psychic driving is interesting, because it's kind of like a similar term would be like gaslighting, where there's suggestion and types of things, and there's all these terms when you dig deep into it, like neuralistic programming and everything else there too. It's why, like, if you go on Twitter today, anybody's Twitter feed, there's usually like only like 3 or 4 really different types of tweets. There's like a hopeful one that usually has like, the dog that's like dying in your yard, and somehow, it's winter time, and it just shows up on your door, and it's like a polar bear or some bullshit or whatever, and you end up saving it, and then the animal. You get the uplifting one after a really nasty kind of one, or something that infuriates you, and it's psychological programming 101. It's what they do in magazines and everything. That psychology has never gone away. It's just the form of it's been different in today's extremely, allegedly, openly progressive society. And one of the things about the show I've suggested to you is that watching this for a second time, earlier on, it became very clear to me that Hannibal is trying to have something he's never had before, which is a family. And I say he hasn't had it before because if you haven't read the books or you're not familiar with the movies, so even though the TV show can separate itself a little bit from that, and does, it's fun watching it build up, because in the end of it all, in all of our personal lives, no matter what we like or who we like and how things go, that's what we want, right? We want to feel like we belong to something that's bigger than it's bigger than a part of us. It's being part of a whole. And so I've said that Abigail's like the surrogate daughter, and Will's like the potential significant other. I'm not going to say bitch. I'm not going to demean the terms there, but it's obvious that Hannibal sees something in Will that he likes, and what he's trying to do is plant these suggestions and seeds in his mind about, well, if he really is very like me, and we might possibly have this relationship in the future, then what has to happen is he has to come to me on his own terms. I can't force him, manipulate him, because that creates resentment and does not really equate to a fully functional romantic type of relationship. So some people think this is really far off base. I don't think it is at all. And I think the whole point here that was starting to bother me is that we saw with Will, we were talking about it, how he's got an infection in his brain. It's an encephalitis, right? So it messes with your brain. So it's actively changing the way you process emotions. So he lies about it or whatever to keep an eye on it because he's trying. He's like he's taking the long game into account here, right? So all these little sub things that happen and the deaths that occur. One thing that is good in these episodes that they kind of like start the time together more so in 12. One of the reasons, even though you and I differ on 11 as far as how much we liked it, is I get really tired very quickly of Will's, hey, I'm mentally struggling stuff. And so even though the tone pole's cool, watching, the waves boil over him and all that stuff,
Yeah.
it's like whatever. But now it's just, I don't, whatever. But the whole thing here with Gideon, I was a little surprised and thought this was some of the better stuff because the more this guy talked, Dory went, "Hey, this guy's a pretty good actor." You can't always be a cool, slick, sophisticated killer like Hannibal or like American Psycho or anything like that. This guy's just disturbing naturally, and it's a testament to the show that they're able to have so many side characters that make you feel a little bit slimy. Like Chilton, I've always been disgusted by Chilton, and this guy in here is just a complete bum. So we've got nothing but, for the most part, a bunch of assholes or bums in the show that's hard to sit there and root for anybody other than possibly Will and Hannibal. But it's painful watching Will go through what Hannibal's putting him through. Now, I'm ranting here a little bit, but that's kind of generally my theme to it because I don't need the particulars of how Chilton was able to successfully break out, like the fugitive accidentally or intentionally or whatever, and all that. But they do show us in a technical way Will's ability to kind of see what happened and all that. But you start to feel the momentum building a little bit while they're looking for him. And frankly, no pun intended, he kind of steals the scene here at the end of the episode. This one, I actually started liking it with him at the end. Let me pause here and let you fill in some blanks.
Yeah, no. Because we do get him put into like the armored car and everything, and he's kind of trying to goad the people that's in the car with him. Like, oh well, how are you doing with your wife? You're married, aren't you? Yeah. Well, here's what I can tell you: don't get divorced. Just kill her. It worked for me.
I loved it.
But then to go from that, and he's talking about the person from the institute on the side with the white outfit. I wondered how you got him, how you keep him so white, and then you just close up on it and red blood on it. He's escaped. Will's able to see it, and they're going ahead, and like when they talk to Chilton, you're right. Chilton is absolutely a scumbag. He's like, oh well, yeah, well, guess we won't be going to court. But they're still going to try to catch him. What I enjoy is when Freddie Lounds gets a call, though, because she gets a call from somebody that wrote a piece on not Chilton, on Gideon, Dr. Gideon, yes. Mm-hmm. And she gets invited. Yeah, I want to talk to you about this. She comes in and she opens the door. What does she find? Well, it is that guy with his tongue coming out through his neck, because Gideon was the one who was called. I don't know how she didn't recognize the voice, because I could easily tell. It sounded like him to me too. But he has Freddie Lounds in captivity, kidnaps her, and now Will and Jack are chasing after that.
There's a brief scene interspersed with all these when we see Will in the psychiatric's office with Hannibal talking about how he's not feeling himself and he's feeling crazy because it's getting a little bit worse with him. He seemed to kind of get a lid on a little bit, but while everything sort of seemed like it's cleaned up in the past episode or two, where it almost seems like it's filler, it's now starting to unravel because something's gnawing at his subconscious about the feelings of everything. So whatever physical manifestations he's hallucinating, like whether it's he's feeling overwhelmed, and that's what the ocean rushing over him is supposed to feel like, and he sees it in his clock and is sweating and all that stuff here too. We see the image of that. I don't know what to call it, a stag and a black elk, whatever it is, and all that too, that we only see that during certain times when certain things are going on, particularly when we see Hannibal. And something that I'm trying not to segue too hard here because it might piss some people off. And frankly, I really don't care, but it's not something you and I have ever looked at or talked about at least yet. I'm a big fan of the movie Eyes Wide Shut, Kubrick's last film. Some people say he was murdered afterwards because he's had creative control and the studio was going to edit out a lot of it, which they did. So that's why some people think, well, the movie doesn't make a lot of sense. It's slow. They repeat a lot of stuff. It's kind of dreamy and it's not whatever. Kubrick, I've seen some of his films, and I can't say I'm a huge Kubrick fanatic like some people are, but I do know that that's one of the few films I've seen of his that I was just so into every scene and going, well, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? Every set piece, every line of dialogue, everything is intentional, right? It's not just ad-libbing like if you're doing comedy or something. And there's a scene where Tom Cruise's character walks in and he's trying to get a costume to sneak into this, what turns out to be the orgy scene. And the guy that's in control of the shop, when you walk in there and the guy's talking to the way it's framed in shop, you see the mannequins literally, if you're observant, you see that when they go back to the same hallway they walk through, it's a very small shop, they're all out of order. They've moved. They've done stuff like that. You see a Christmas tree in almost everything, or you see a Freemason symbol or whatever, if you're into the Illuminati stuff and all that. It's all right there, and it's intentional. The occult, stuff having to do with children, which I won't say. And so people just really hate this film. The reason why I'm mentioning that here is because when I think of stuff that's being intentional, I'm curious as to, as we're starting to wrap up season 1, and I've talked about the family aspect here in the show, I did mention how every death, every situation we see her, like Alana Bloom, having feelings for Will, but because he says he's unstable and she feels like she can't make the commitment to him. Well, it's the same thing that's going on with Hannibal with him. Hannibal needs him to come to him on his own. So he's trying to see if this is a possible relationship. What I like is, though, every time we've had a murder or somebody that was going to kill somebody, it was a dysfunctional relationship, but it mirrored or echoed some relationship that's going on. We haven't seen Jack Crawford's wife in a while when she's got cancer. He's got a dysfunctional relationship. What does he do? He's ignoring that. He's focusing on Will. He seemed to have repaired his relationship with Will. The one thing I want to mention here in the scene, even though I'm doing a lot of talking right now, is I think, and I might be wrong, is you've mentioned before when we have these scenes and are talking back and forth, Hannibal is really saying stuff that he's psychically driving Will to kind of think about. He's letting Will get to the place he thinks he could be at. And basically that means be a monster, not just somebody who thinks like one. Are you really one? Because remember, he did kill somebody, right? Garrett Jacob Hobbs at the beginning that we still see occasionally. And if you notice these two, the way it's shot, I think it's a one shot in the middle where the guy's on the left and the guy's on the right. I might be wrong, Pixel, but the reason why I'm rambling on all this is I swear they've now switched chairs, because this is some of the genius of what I liked about the show with the writing is they're able to say these complex things with only a few sentences. And they also show it to you. So while you're listening to it, you're seeing it and you're hearing, what's going on in the background with stuff. And when he says, I'm feeling crazy, I'm not feeling like myself. Well, yeah, you're not even sitting in the correct chair and you're saying it to Hannibal. So it's just a real joy to kind of watch all this too. And the thing I like too is whatever we know about each of these characters watching, we know Hannibal's up to something. We just don't know what it is. He is a psychopath, so maybe he's up to really no good. I've felt like some of the things that's happened, he's just quickly made a decision and tried to kind of like play it by ear, which doesn't sound right. Because obviously he's the main serial killer that there's the Chesapeake Ripper. So something's bugging his subconscious, and that's why we're starting to see this figure again, because it really represents, it was like an artifact, I think, in his office, even, I think we talked about an episode of Hannibal. So it's kind of interesting because the exoticness of like the totem pole deaths and all these things, it takes somebody that's very well educated and of course technically proficient to do it. So ignoring the logistical part to it and all that, where's all this leading to? And I feel like it's definitely starting to build up. I just can't tolerate him breaking down mentally. It's the worst part of the show for me. But I do like how here he's trying to flirt with Alana in there, and she's like, she wants to be with him and his dogs and all that. A positive, healthy relationship that basically is like a no, and it's like, how many times are you going to get an opportunity to have something like this in the show? This is the only time we pretty much see it. And she's put herself out there twice, which normally it's not how it goes. Usually the men doing the pursuing and are vulnerable and, they're supposed to go on a women's cues, and she definitely does it, not in a slutty way, but it's pretty dynamic, because even though I think we disagreed on Freddie Lounds, and where she's just, a tabloid journalist. I do think that when she's with Abigail, we've seen where she almost has like this older sister vibe to it. So when she gets kind of like drawn into this situation of, hey, I want to, work with you on this piece or whatever like that, because she gets the information really quick. She's a victim of her own vices, right? I just popped really hard because, like I say, some of this episode was boring to me. I don't like the Will's whiny ass stuff. But when we see Gideon in there and he's drained the guy's blood and he's giving him the Colombian necktie and he's sitting there talking to her, holding the gun. And so this scene is so tremendous because I would be laughing my ass off if I was the guy in the wheelchair and they had like this prosthetic tongue coming out of my throat. Because the way, that's old news here in Florida, Colombian neckties and, all these different torture things because certain groups and will torture you in certain ways to leave messages. So the idea here is that you don't cut the person's tongue out, you slit their throat and pull their tongue in there. And I even think there's a split second in here while he's talking, if you look down at the tongue, you see it moving like it's a mechanical tongue. This is when I started having some fun with the episode, because we forget that Gideon's not just a guy that's been caught. He's been made to be a victim. So he's been, whether he's really the Chesapeake or the copycat, he's set up to be that. He's the fall guy, and nobody gives a shit because he's just a fucking killer for whatever reason. And even though he's told one of the two guys in the police officers that are escorting him, hey, if you got a problem with your wife, just kill her. That's an old joke. That's not a new one. Because it does simplify things a lot rather than divorce and everything else. And so there's an element of seriousness to it, even though it sounds kind of goofy, like he's fucking with him, because he's talking to him like he just wants to pass the time. He's not like being malicious. And that's the beauty of the way this guy portrays this character, is that he's not being mean or evil. He's just in a different headspace, and he's clearly kind of like made it his own, as it were. So I thought this is really interesting development, and this episode survives because of him. And it helps that he's got a sense of humor, like when he leaves the note when Jack Crawford already comes up to see him, and he's got the little note there, please deliver to the Red Cross, because he's trying to guy all his blood. This is good stuff. This is good stuff.
Because in a way, he's trying to be a copycat. Because he's trying to goad the Ripper, trying to draw the real Ripper out, because they thought he was a Ripper. So that's why he was, like, in that first murder that he did in this episode, he left all the organs strung up by veins because he doesn't want to take the organs. He doesn't do anything with it. He's leaving them behind. And
you're right, because him wanting to be seen is what we all want as a human being. We want to be acknowledged by somebody else. And that's the whole thing about relationships, not necessarily falling in love per se, but that's the gateway part to it, is that somebody sees you for who you are, for better, for worse, no matter if you're good or if you're broken or incomplete or complete, that's okay. And somehow you're able to make it work. And so in its own way, he's seeking love. He didn't have it with his wife, so he killed her. And he's letting guys know, hey man, I'm just trying to help you out here. I can already tell that you don't like your wife and you've got a lot of resentment. So just kill her. It sounds funny, but it's not from his perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but
you're not buying it.
I think he seems like he's having a great time. So he's the one that's like, when he's saying that line, you should just kill her. Look, it's working out great for me. He knows that his situation isn't ideal, but he also is the one that's going to get himself out of it in the next minute by breaking his wrist.
The old I'll dislocate my thumb trick or whatever he did.
I only need one hand.
The best line here, though, one of them in this episode was when we're all looking at the buys with those two FBI guys and hot Asian assistant, is that when they get the buys, they're looking at it and Will's basically melting down, but this is where that subconscious part of Will's brain, he can't turn off no matter what. And he says, hey, he's telling us where to catch him, and everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? You're an idiot. You're dumb. You're stupid. Everyone's
with the arm.
All these reasons. And he goes, where's the last place you saw a severed arm, Jack?
Yeah.
And Jack looks at him. I'm like, oh, that's so good. I mean, that's
I almost forgot about that. Yeah, because the Chesapeake Ripper does, in fact, kill in response and takes the
Yes.
arm. Because
Yes.
Eddie doesn't want to be caught. But not yet. But that's arms missing, so goes ahead.
Take it away, Gideon.
But Gideon, he's leaving it behind. In the observatory, he did, in fact, get
surgery in the observatory. Oh, this is tremendous.
he has Chilton, and he has him all strapped down because Gideon was a doctor. He was a surgeon. He knows what he's doing. And he has Freddie pumping the ventilator. She's going to keep you alive while I start tearing out what I like. And he's going ahead, tosses the flesh.
Chilton's high as fuck. He can't feel nothing. This is funny.
Starts pulling things out. It's amazing how much I can take out of the human body before you really start feeling anything. But that is when they're going ahead, and we do have to start talking about Will again, because Will is going with Jack. He's having his dramatic episodes. They're coming in frequently. He does not look well. Pardon me. We get to the observatory. Jack goes in with SWAT, and then what do they find? They find Freddie Lounds there, still pumping that ventilator, keeping him alive, as this guy's carrying his own organs.
He's just laying there holding him like it's a baby bump.
Gideon's watching from outside, and he walks away. But that's when Will stepped out of the car, saw the stag, and when Gideon gets in his getaway car, who's behind him? But Will isn't seeing Gideon.
Yeah.
He is seeing, Gary Jacob Hobbs. And so where do they go? I think actually Gideon asks, who's your doctor? Who's your psychiatrist?
And well, you know what? It's a legitimate question, right? Because what's the one answer that we know that Will doesn't know? It's Hannibal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in his own way, Gideon is trying to figure out the same thing Will is in a way. Right?
Yeah. But when they go ahead, they do get to Hannibal because Will is starting to freak out all the more. He's seeing Garrett Jacob Hobbs, and Gideon sits there, and Hannibal looks at him. Who do you see? And that's what he says. And he's like, I don't see anybody, because Will can't see reality. He doesn't know Gideon's actually the one right there. And so Hannibal convinces him no one's there. And then he has a mild seizure.
Yeah, because remember, he's got the encephalitis, which is, it messes with a part of your brain. So, one show that's on right now that's a weekly drop. I forget what channel it's on. Might be Peacock. I don't remember. I think it's HBO Max. It's the Stephen King story, and they're doing it as a weekly show, and they kind of go back to like the 20s, 30s, 40s kind of time frame, 60s. There's a little bit of bouncing around, and one of the main characters is an army person who it's mentioned that he was put on a special project because he saved somebody in the war, took some injuries or like that, so he literally cannot process fear because a part of his brain physically was destroyed to it. And so it kind of made me think of that, because not only does Will have these connections that he hasn't learned to filter out, or they're overactive or whatever biologically allows that to happen, he's physically sick right now with the fever, and he's got this encephalitis, which I really don't know too much about, but it's not something I think you want to fuck with. But then Hannibal's a doctor, and I'm sure he's seen this because he's been through shithole conditions and all that stuff there too. But it allows him to be susceptible, and in a way too. I'm reading probably too much into this. I think the whole point in this season one, at least up to right now, when I've been saying that he's trying to see if Will come to him, is that he's got to be in the right frame of mind to do it. So he's just seeing what Will does. Because remember, he kind of like with Abigail was like, hey, I saved you basically because I was curious what you'd be like and what you do. And we saw that very early on, and that was kind of striking. And it's all about Hannibal too. It's not about these other people, but it was interesting because this is where I just start not liking Will, because it's like, okay, have your little seizure, your little wimp ass. You're the one that knows everything. Everyone's just kind of like twiddling their thumbs, and you can't get it together because you're sick. So I'm probably a little too hard on Will. I have a little Jack Crawford in me, but it was interesting watching not Hannibal and Will, but watching Gideon sitting at the table like, what the fuck's going on here? I think I know. Oh, you're really gonna let me go, or what's going on? I thought that was kind of cool or whatever. But it's very interesting because the whole psychic driving is what this whole last couple minutes of this episode is setting up with Will and Hannibal.
With this bit at the end though, with Hannibal, he has that seizure. Hannibal sits down across from Gideon, and it's like, oh, well, yeah, I have to say it does seem troubling to have your identity stolen from you.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes ahead. He just wants to go ahead and offer the next piece, because actually that is one thing, because he does seem to like Alana Bloom too. So going ahead and risking her, what you said earlier about him reacting. That's what it feels like he's doing when he seems like somebody so put together, so everything's thought out. But this is a reaction. He didn't expect Will to bring in Gideon.
That's what it felt like to me too. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, he didn't expect Will to have that mild seizure. I thought you cared for the boy. I said it was mild. And he's just standing there while that's happening. He's like, oh, okay. And he offers Alana's position where they're keeping her hidden to Gideon. And then Will eventually does come to. He wakes him and is like, oh no, I'm going to go try to get her. You stay here. The only place you can go is the hospital. But he purposefully leaves that gun and the car keys right there because he knows what Will's going to do. He knows he's going to go after him. And what happens? Will goes there. He walks right up next to Gideon, and he's still seeing Garrett Jacob Hobbs. And Gideon kind of goads him on about maybe he can get inside of Alana's head by getting inside of Alana's head. And then we cut inside to Alana, and she hears the gunshot, and Will collapses next to the dead body of Gideon.
Well, presumably because there's a scene immediately after this, which is the last scene where Hannibal and Crawford are talking. We'll get to that here in a second. The one thing too, just kind of reemphasizing what I've said several times, basically this whole episode about mirroring the relationships in here, is that having your identity stolen. Well, everybody wants to know who they are, because if you don't know who you are, you don't know who the other person is that you're trying to have a relationship with. You can't. You've got to know thyself. They say that Shakespeare, but that comes from older stuff than that. Shakespeare was one of the first great guys to rip off a lot of older ideas and get popular for it. Thank you, Gutenberg Biber, and all the reprinting that got done at that time. It's just one of those things in culture. And I think that Hannibal willingly seeing what would happen here by letting Gideon know, not only does that make him look good in Gideon's eyes by giving him something, because that's what happens in a relationship. You give somebody something and you don't expect anything in return, and the act of doing that is significant, and the person judges you on the merit of the giving. And that's why and the normal animal world, which humans are a part of, the male almost always brings some sort of gift to a woman, a token, a pebble if you're a bird, or a fish if you're this, that, or whatever. And so Gideon's not mad at Will. He's pretty lucid. Will's the one that's fucked in the head, and they're standing next to each other, and he's basically saying, yeah, well, I want to get out. And they both want the same thing. That's the beauty of the shot, Gideon and Will. It's just that Will's fucked in the head, and Gideon has just kind of got more sense of his predicament until he gets shot by Will. And the whole point was the idea is that, well, if he got rid of the person that was involved in him being identified and put away, and we also saw her earlier this season with Will questioning him on some stuff. So it's the natural course of events to sit there and say, well, if I get rid of her, maybe then my identity is not stolen. I know who I am. Therefore, I'm a complete person. It's not about, whether I get caught or I get killed. It's about that journey, if you will. And same thing with Will. So that's why he still doesn't know his, and he takes the action of shooting him, because the next line basically is Crawford, having a drink with Hannibal at his office, even though they're going over some serious stuff, basically saying they'll be sewing him up together through the night, assuming he makes it or whatever. So he's technically not dead. So
No.
to me, that means he's not going to be. But we'll see.
He's not going to be.
Yeah, I mean, just because that's TV, right? But I mean, even here, it's interesting because Crawford was the one earlier in the season that kind of intuitively know that some of these things aren't adding up. But because of the nature of how you look at it in his position, Hannibal allowed everybody to come to the conclusions that it does fit. Problem solved. So there's no reason to question it, whereas Will comes from a different place. That's why the dynamic between Jack and Will are pretty interesting, I think, here too. But yeah, we're almost done with this episode. Before we get into 12 here, we've got this scene and one quick one at the end here a little bit when Hannibal sees somebody, especially that we've yet to really talk too much about. What's going on here for you?
With Gillian Anderson.
With his psychiatrist.
Yes. Because he's talking with her about how he sees Will.
I see myself in Will. That's psychological visibility. That's it right there. He's in love, bro. I know I keep saying it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You do. Well, they go on the aspect of seeing it as friendship, but I see what you're saying as well. I do.
By love, I'm not saying sexual.
I know.
I'm not suggesting that at all here. It could be as a part of it, because usually, you can have different types of love, but usually an intense. I'll withhold comment about some other things. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. That's pretty. I mean, other than the conversation happens, I'm really itching to get to the next bit.
I find it interesting that Hannibal's psychiatrist is a woman, and Gillian's seems as smart as him. Because part of being a psychiatrist is you take what somebody gives you, and I hate to say it, but you basically refuse it, and you just let them talk, so you see what they're willing to give you, what they're trying not to say, everything else there too. And she's basically telling him in her own way that, at least this is the way I took this exchange. Hey, if you really like this guy, as fucked up as you are, you just need to make sure you got to do it right. And if Will's fucked up too, he's got to come to you, So that's not a new concept, I think, for me with this, but that's the icing on the cake here too. All right, let's get into 12. 12's a banger. 12 has a lot more momentum in it to me. And I know you said you preferred this one rather than 12. Start us off with 12, please.
Well, let's talk about a hunka burning love, or a hunka burning girl. It's late at night. Will is still in the hospital, recovering, and he goes ahead. He's taking along his IV as he's walking and seeing Georgia, the girl from a couple episodes ago who had her arm, like the skin of her arm, peeled off. It's far too easy.
She had that unique physical malady that forced her to be in that oxygen tank so her body could regenerate skin.
Yeah. So she's still in there, and they're talking, and he goes ahead and says, "You're looking you're looking pretty," and she's talking about how she really doesn't want to remember anything like that. That's what they hope, but she really just wishes she could just forget it all. But after that visit, somebody else visits the hospital. Who? It's Hannibal with chicken soup for Will, and they go ahead and they talk about Georgia, and Will says she doesn't really want to recover. She doesn't want all that haunting her. And then we get to see Georgia one last time. And she's in her tube. She is combing her hair. And as she's combing through, there's a subtle spark. And suddenly, all around her, it ignites. And she burns up right within her own tube in the hospital.
Great graphic. Absolutely disgusting to watch.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, and for TV at the time, 10, 12, 15 years ago, whenever this came out, that looked really great. It still looks great today. And it's mean. The fiery way it burns and consumes her, it's vicious. You know, it's because it's oxygen, so it's highly flammable and all that. And they get into the technical aspects of it too. But well, you know, she's another example. She finally gets what she wants out of life. She gets to be seen psychologically through Will, and they have an honest exchange here. She feels like a woman because he compliments her. When I say flirting with her, he's letting her know she's pretty. He's not being a creepo and trying to have sex with her or anything like that. But the point is they've adopted the normal roles that exist in these situations, male and female, and so she has to die. And you know, frankly, I was getting a little tired of the serial killer of the week aspect of some of these episodes. I felt like some of them were filler, but because of what happened with her and what's going on in the rest of this episode, I went, okay, everything we watched before was intentional. And so it's not just there to fill in time, which I'm thankful for. It means there wasn't any crap going on that we go, whatever. You know, maybe the mother with the two kids and all that, and somebody else might have been filler. But right now, some of these key ones are pretty good. Because in the previously on Hannibal at the beginning, something you've mentioned before earlier on when Hannibal made the call to Gideon, and you hear basically the question coming up, well, could you recognize his voice? And, you know, these things are going to come into play. So it's a nice little opening exchange to let you know that this, we're not screwing around, but let's talk about the soup. Man, homemade chicken soup. He's got ginger, star anise. That's got a little bit of an Asian tinge to it. You know, that's pretty prominent and all that. The actual soup in the small soup bowl that he gives him, I wish they would have lingered on a little bit longer because it absolutely looks divine. It's still skin on or whatever. I bet it's crispy. And it's been a while since they just sat down and they broke bread together. And this is very reminiscent when he made him the breakfast scramble here. He's listening to him. He's pouring him coffee. How are you not going to let your defenses down when somebody's taking care of you like that at all? So I'm watching him, and Will's kind of calming down a little bit. And as much as I was bitching about Will being a wuss ass last week and all these episodes, all of a sudden from here on, it moves clearer, and he's trusting himself, which is what I think Hannibal wants, but it means Hannibal's going to have to deal with some stuff because the whole idea of there being a copycat is true. It's just that, hey, wait a minute. We don't have the copycat in jail. This is what's going on. And it's pretty good because I think Hannibal really still wants him to physically come along as or whatever, but he has to basically send him through hell before he could possibly have him at some point. And, you know, if that were to ever happen. But man, it was just absolutely brutal what she went through, this woman. I kind of made me feel sorry for it, but him not asking, not whining, telling Jack Crawford, no, we got a copycat. We need a blah, blah, blah. Crawford, even in the last scene in the last episode with Hannibal, and we saw it a few episodes ago, there was something bugging him that might be right. And when he looked at it in a different way, he tells the two FBI guys that like to help out a little bit, hey, I'm going to get phone records. We're going to do this. We're going to do all that. But now we get somebody who I think we don't talk about enough. We haven't seen her all the time. We get Abigail Hobbs sitting down with Freddie talking about what's going on. And this exchange is freaking awesome or whatever because Freddie is there to help her do the book deal and get some money. And Abigail is so smart. And this actress, the way she's presenting herself as helpless versus smart, you could see it just in an instant cross her face without her eyes even blinking. And this is where I feel you and I have a big difference on how we think of Freddie and all that, because she basically says, well, wait a minute, they were having a disagreement about who killed the guy Nick or whatever, which obviously was Abigail. And Freddie's like, no, he wasn't a killer. I've interviewed enough to know when I see one. And so you can kind of see her kind of like in her head getting mental. And she's like, well, how do you know? Like, what's like the tell or whatever. And she goes, oh, it's just the way they act. It's like a specific brand of hostility. And she's looking at her. And I don't think Freddie knows that she's looking at the killer, but that tells me she's not just a dumb, story chaser. So I've appreciated that they've given her a bit more depth in her character that I don't know that this character had in the movies, if I recall. But again, they're reemphasizing verbally what we're talking about, where Jack and everyone's talking about a copycat. And then this is where Abigail's having the, oh shit moment. I'm fucked. You know what I'm saying? So this is beautiful because, again, whenever two people talk about a relationship, it's either their relationship or the other main one that's going on here too. So I thought this was a great way to get us going into the episode.
Yeah. Going ahead and having Freddie Lounds talk with Abigail, and she'll have a line later where she talks about smart girls and noticing smart girls and how they go ahead and dance around things. Meanwhile, Will is still, he checks himself out of the hospital. He goes to Jack. He is convinced that this was murder. That Georgia did not take off her bracelet to go ahead and try to kill herself. When he goes ahead, comes back. I thought that was, there's this weird gap in space between these episodes.
What do you mean?
Because, so like, we know this one takes place immediately after the last one.
Okay.
But you don't really feel that with the last episode. It feels like it could be a couple weeks since Abigail's been put into the hospital.
Oh, you mean like the timeline, the overall timeline from episode 1 to now? They're not evenly spaced. No, yeah, I think, I can feel that. I can see that too.
Because what does Will do when they go ahead and we don't have hot Asian lady there? We have the two side guys, and he opens up the what's it called in a morgue that they pull out the drawer and the body's in there? Damn it, I can't remember what that's called. But he goes ahead and pulls out the body of the person that was killed 2 episodes ago, because they're talking about how his face was half cut off.
Yep. Well, you get it twice here, right? Because you mentioned he goes into Crawford's office and says, no, there's a copycat. This is what's going on. Jack's not having any of it, but he's convinced by Will's conviction to listen enough. This is where Laurence Fishburne is such a great actor. You can see the disbelief in his eyes, the way he just looks and stares and all that. And he's such a good actor, the way he can just whatever. But we get that re-emphasized in here, where Jack's professional and smart enough to know, I have to follow this, because it was his original gut instinct, right? And so now it's come up again. It's like, yeah, I was right before. I really got to dive into it. So this is when he gets Hannibal into the office to kind of talk about some stuff. And it's funny because I feel like Hannibal's reacting in a moment to Crawford, almost squirming a little bit. But this is where Hannibal is very subtly planting the seeds to make Will the fucking fall guy. Which, if we haven't seen by now, we're like, why the fuck is he doing that? And we can talk about that here at the end of the episode, or we'll see what happens. But he says stuff like, well, he needs our support, whether or not mental illness is involved. So he's not saying, hey, in my professional opinion, I think Will's this way or whatever like that, because they're all kind of friendly but professional. So he's letting Jack take that seed and decide how he wants to do it, when he's like, hey, there's days when Will doesn't even understand his own thinking. He brings up the missing time things and all that. So he's letting Jack come to his own conclusion. And so he's not even looking Crawford in the eye. He's basically like, just looking off to the side, like he's disappointed. Like, yeah, there's just been times when, he's just had these gaps or whatever. So, I think it's an interesting observation on your part. I don't know how pertinent that is to what's happening here, but it's there for sure, right? I mean, no doubt about it. I don't know. I don't know if that means anything right now or not. Maybe.
I'm going to let you keep talking, because Jack goes to somebody, which I know you've been pretty much popping every time she pops on the screen. She gets the most in an episode thus far, and it's with Gillian Anderson.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's there and he wants to talk to her and he can't bring her in because it's not official and she says it. But the acting part, he's standing there, he's waiting for her to invite her in. She's, if you just look at the nonverbals here, she's pouring herself some wine, which he can't take because he's on call. So she then pours herself a little bit, holds it up in front of her, basically takes a sip. She walks backward. She's standing with her back to the fountain. He's not moving forward. He does for a moment after he takes his hat off and he says, if we can't discuss Dr. Lecter, maybe we can talk about you. And she's like, hey, that was pretty interesting, but we get a nugget here that you were attacked by a patient not too long ago. And he says, I've read the report because we know he's professional. Dr. Lecter had given a statement. So in a roundabout way, he's trying to give information about it, and she's basically caught off guard here. So she's trying to lead Jack into whatever information she was willing to give up. But we don't know her history with Hannibal other than she has one. And let's be honest, and this, I'm going to state the obvious, okay? This isn't a dumbass thing here. She's a woman. If you know anything all about Hannibal, he had a sister that I think seriously, and I'm not joking when I say this, so this might be disgusting if you don't know about it. I think he had to eat her to save her from being ate by cannibals and all that. And that's what Hannibal Rising was about. I may have that wrong, but he had a young sister, I think, that he was in charge of. I think it was a sister. Maybe it was just a young woman that he was with when he was on the run. I think her name was Misha or something. So he really values the women in his life almost more so than males. He certainly has a fondness for her too, but as we'll see at the end of the episode, even that has its own boundaries too. But basically, Jack's there to sit there and say, how far do you think Lecter will go in doing stuff with his patients? Because that idea of the psychic driving that we've been talking about, letting people do all that stuff here. Because now, like I say, Crawford is so good when he gets, like I say, it's like a dog with a bone. When he gets his nose to something, he doesn't let go. And he knows the right way to approach the person to get the information he needs. It's not the, hey, I'm going to knock on a bunch of doors, ask them all the same questions. Everybody's going to say no. He's going to go look around, see who's willing to talk to him, seeing who's ignored. And, the stuff we've seen in movies and all that too, but it's basically knowing who your audience is. So it's pretty interesting. I have no idea what she's up to, and it's a wild card. So I don't know if I like that. But basically, this is where he comes back, and now he's like, yeah, fuck yeah, we're on to something here. He tells the two FBI guys, hey, get phone logs, go back and do all this. I want to know every place that this person's been and all that. They're tracking everything. And then we get a moment with Will and Abigail in here where basically they have a heart-to-heart about some stuff. And so the question is I think Will is the one that's got the least amount of knowledge of what his situation is, whereas Abigail's working him a little bit. What did you think?
Yeah, no, when they're going ahead and they're sitting and talking, because Will is just, it is hard to watch him. Like, even here, when it feels like he's trying to put on a strong presence for her, in this first scene, he's kind of, I'm trying to think of the right way to describe it. He looks physically ill at this point.
Yeah, this is the worst.
Since last episode, he hasn't been right. And
I think what it is Abigail's working him, but she's trying to figure out where Will's coming from because they're setting him up to be the copycat, and she's trying to she doesn't know psychic driving or suggestion, but she's natural with her instincts. And honestly, it's not a secret when we say this. We know that she was helping her father. She was the lure, right?
Yeah.
So
that's
coming up, right? So that's the beauty of this whole scene here. It's like, Will, you're getting fucked right now, bro. You don't even know it. You're trying to do the right thing, and it's going to fuck you. Because he's trying to protect her in the way he knows how to, which is different than Hannibal, right? They have their different ways of approaching, do it like two parents with a kid. They got their own ways of discipline, right? Or how they're going to protect their child or let them grow or whatever. Hannibal does show up to see his psychiatrist, and She's like, I'm speaking to you now as a colleague and all that. And he gets kind of pissed at her or whatever because she's like, hey, you need to stop with what's going on. Jack was here and da 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 da. You know, I didn't really tell him too much, just some half truths here and there. He won't even physically look at her, which he normally stares and gives her direct eye contact. So he's letting her know, really pissed because she's trying to sit down on her couch and look at him and he won't have anything to deal with it. So she's basically telling him the same thing that I've been saying here with what we've been talking about with relationships. Hey, if you want him, he's got to come to you this way. You know, when you try to help somebody, then because you're trying to help somebody, they don't automatically are supposed to like you for it. It's you manipulating them by saying, see, I was trying to do something for Einstein and you're going to act that way to me. It's a form of manipulation. So she's basically saying you need to be completely straight with yourself about what's going on here because it's affecting your relationship with it. And all she basically does is kind of redirect it since he's not listening to, hey, he knows about the guy that attacked me, who had the tongue cut out or whatever, because that's what we saw with this other killer. She goes, but he doesn't know how or why or anything like that. And he says, well, you can protect your patients from Jack Crawford, but I can't protect mine. She's like, not anymore. So they're kind of like, yeah, there's definitely some tension here between these two. She's looking at her watch, which is the universal symbol of get the fuck out of here. So it's not like a lot is happening in this episode, but the episode's moving very fast because even though he looks like shit, Will's sitting in the chair, and I swear they've switched chairs again. We're like that now that he feels like he's himself. He's on the left-hand side, and he's telling Hannibal, hey, this is what's going on. The problem is Hannibal knows that all things are leading towards him, so Hannibal's got to try to get this going where it's going to set up, but he can't make it happen. Will has to get there because he's basically even trying to plant suggestions with him about, hey, you might have dementia, you might have this or whatever, and even talk about framing and all that. So it's so beautiful. It's just been a treat to kind of watch this kind of come together because he's like, hey, we're both literally providers of, or not providers, protectors. What's the term for when you're legally in charge of somebody as their ward? They're both Abigail's ward, let's say, or whatever. He says, I can't let Abigail be brought into it or whatever. So Hannibal, we know, is using Abigail already to kind of set Will up, and hopefully we can get out of it. But then this is when the FBI guys and Crawford get together, basically have all this information and data. We find out that when he goes to talk to Freddie Lounds and they have a conversation that he's taken Abigail out to Minnesota to the house originally where it was all at. And this is where, unfortunately, I think it's a great bit of acting where Crawford approaches Hannibal and says, hey, what's going on? And Hannibal seems kind of crestfallen about it, like, yeah, I'm really kind of sorry it's like that. And Crawford's like ripping him one. He's like, well, how long did you know about it? And he goes, well, recently he's been this and that. And he goes, oh, shit, you didn't tell me. He's like, I'm trying to determine if it was trauma or mental illness from the way, he's dealing with all the stress you're putting him under. So Hannibal's just being absolutely masterful here in the way he's deflecting all these things, but he still does what's going with him and Abigail. And this is where we see all the pieces come together for 12 episodes here, because it's basically the end of the episode where they're in the cabin in Minnesota with all the trophies, and Abigail's with them, kind of freaking out. And in a flash of insight, which is how most things come, that's your subconscious working on it, Will stops and he looks at her and says, hey, based off of something she said, do you hunt, or do you more of a hunter or a fisher? And she says, well, this and that. And he goes, but you're the lure. And she goes, and she tries to, she's like, oh shit, I got figured out here. She tries to explain to him, oh, I was the bait with my dad. I didn't want that to be a part of my life. She's trying to basically say it wasn't her fault, that she was complicit in it. This was a phenomenal way to kind of wrap up the end of the episode. Because like I say, not a lot of things are happening. It's just that Will has another episode, wakes up on a plane. Abigail's not there. And we see Abigail knocking on the door of Hannibal, explaining what's going on, and basically almost speaks to her in past tense, like, hey, what's going on? She's like, well, he knows everything. And he tells her, hey, so does Jack Crawford. And it's this actress is so good. I don't know if she's been in a lot of stuff or whatever, but it's hard to play innocent, whatever. And she's like, hey, if I go to leave, they'll catch me. And she's like, hey, you can't protect me more. They're going to arrest you. They're going to arrest me and Will. So they know they're all fucked. And they don't know what's going to happen here. And he basically asks Hannibal, she asks Hannibal, did you kill Marissa? Which is the rude friend of hers, the one. And it's like, well, they will believe he killed her. And then it hits her, just like it hit Will. Wait a minute, how many people did you kill? And he goes, a lot more than your father. So now, if there's any doubt, or I don't want to know, so don't tell me, even though I suspect it, it's all in the open. It's just that Will and Jack don't know who the killers are. This is really good stuff, man. And this is a really strong way to end. Holy crap, this feels like it's now flying at 100 miles an hour to me.
Will you kill me? I'm so sorry, Abigail. Yeah. And like I said, there is a scene here with Freddie Lounds,
Mm-hmm.
I think talking with Jack, where he talks about believing that they know. What did Abigail help lure those girls, or did did she kill what's his name from the freaking second episode? Because she was a smart girl too and knew how to dance around subjects that you don't want to share. So she knew she was hiding something, and she knew it had to be something like that. These are solid episodes. We only have one. Abigail's going to die.
Do you think so?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't at all.
She asked, "Are you going to kill me?" And what does he respond? "I'm so sorry that I couldn't protect you in this life." She's dead.
I disagree. I don't remember, honestly. I don't think so at all. He's trying to build a family. So what is it they always say that, you can do a bad thing, but still be a good person. It doesn't define you, which some people say, well, it depends on what they did and how they did. Context is key. I think she kind of got in a little over her head and was trying to be a little too cute for it, but those are growing pains, whether you're a serial killer or, if you're an athlete, let's say, you might do something that's very unsportsmanlike and a shithead kind of play or something, right? Doesn't mean that's who you are all the time, but you can slip here and there. And so I think he, like Will, was waiting to see how she was going to be, because if it doesn't work out, yeah, he will whack her. But I do think that that's their surrogate child, and he needs if he doesn't have her, then I don't know if Will sees what they can have in a relationship. So she's, like I say, the important thing too. So it's that old shotgun wedding thing. Oh, you got her pregnant. Well, you better go get married, because you're gonna die if you don't. The old school kind of thing. And I don't know. I could be completely off base, but it'll be interesting to see what happens here in the last episode of season 1, and then eventually when we get to seasons 2 and 3 with it, because it's been great. I know there's been some stuff in the middle. It's felt like filler, but I've really enjoyed rewatching this. I saw it when it came out 12 years ago. Haven't seen it since. I just remember all 3 seasons being radically different in tone, and I really appreciated that one. This one took a few episodes, then I felt like it got its feet going and all that. But this, I really like this last episode. It was really good, really, really good. Any other final thoughts?
Yeah, no. This has been great to go through. I know we haven't really talked about it, but I will be glad to go back to some wholesome burgers with Columbo.
I hear you on that too. Yeah, there'll be definitely fun to tackle season 4 of that. They'll be coming up here on Extreme Movie Show. So I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, retweeting the links out, letting us know if there's any shows or movies that you'd like us to cover here on Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Ron, for Professor Pixel, RDV, and everybody involved. Good night now.
Good night.